Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Today on the show, I'm going to tell you why I think the Detroit Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. We're going to tell you who the third-string running back on Tennessee is, might come into play, and what the game of the week is. There will not be a repeat of last week. And hot dog Jamie Eisenberg is here, dressed up on post-Halloween with a little mustard on the he's got a hot dog suit on. I love it, Jamie. Tell me about your buns.
My buns are toasty.
Yeah. What do you got? Did you wear that last night?
So I was late to our little family trick-or-treating outing, and I was supposed to be a hot dog. My wife was mustard, and I met them walking around, and they left the hot dog at the house. So I said to pay my penance for not wearing the costume like I was supposed to, I'm going to wear it on the air today.
I love it. I love the spirit here. Still feels like, I don't know why, because maybe it's Friday. It's like weekend. It still feels like Halloween to me. I'm still in the Halloween spirit. Also have a ton of candy that I will continue to eat throughout the week. How was your Halloween, Dave?
It was great. I watched football.
That's right. Let's talk about that because, hey, this could be what the Jets look like. Maybe the second half.
The second half.
Second half.
Yeah. Or were they wearing a costume?
I mean, you see the potential at least as they win 21-13. Davante Adams with a big fool you. Thought we had a concussion, but came back and scored a touchdown. That was good to see. There's actually a lot of injuries in this game. Michael Carter for the Jets left with a back injury. They lost 2 offensive linemen. The Texans lost an offensive lineman. The Texans lost Will Anderson. He left around halftime. But Dave, you can start since you weren't trick-or-treating. You were just watching football.
Malachi Corley lost a touchdown.
Oh my gosh.
I was so mad about that touchdown anyway. It's like, that helps nobody. Helps nobody.
You didn't start Malachi Corley in your league?
No, and a rushing touchdown to boot. But yeah, no, he dropped it before the goal line. Anyway, since you were not trick-or-treating and you were only watching football, what were your takeaways from Jets-Texans?
First half gross, second half better for the New York Jets. And it looked like it took 10 quarters for Rodgers and Davante Adams to really get on the same page. And honestly, they should have got going a lot sooner in this game. There was a great throw that Rodgers made to Davante when he was streaking down the sideline. Davante had to dive for it. He dropped it. That kind of stunk. But he looked okay. And I'm talking about Davante looking okay. Rodgers looked better in the second half, but how do we not bring up Garrett Wilson and how awesome he was? Both touchdown catches were ridiculous plays. I think it's the best game that he's played yet in his career. And this is his upside. This is what he's capable of doing. I know he didn't have as many targets as Davante, but he is their number one wide receiver. And in PPR leagues, he is a number one wide receiver moving forward. Totally buy into Garrett Wilson, continuing to be, the most explosive receiver on the Jets. I'll say that.
Adam, I got to ask this question. I'll ask you because I know he was at the time your favorite player. Better catch, Garrett Wilson or Odell Beckham?
Not even close. Beckham.
Not even close?
Beckham was being interfered with. He was being ripped down. And it was a great catch by Garrett Wilson.
I agree.
Beckham's was
not even close.
To me, not even close. And
it's worth thinking about, but it's once you think about it and you remember that Odell was like falling backward as he brings in the ball, but way behind his head. Like that's an 11 out of 10.
Yeah, Adam's quote was pretty cool. What he said about it.
Oh, what did he say?
That he needs to switch sponsorships and go from Adidas to Jumpman.
Yeah, that was cool. So, I mean, but at the same time, the 2 touchdowns that Wilson caught were amazing, but not the type that maybe. All right, I'll just cut to the chase. Should we sell high on the Jets? Is this the peak here?
Well, the schedule is fantastic for them. I mean, that's the thing you want to look at is like this could be the start of something as opposed to the peak of something. Now, granted, 2 touchdowns. Davante Adams leaving the game and then coming back, that was a little surprising that, we're thankful that he was able to clear the concussion protocol and get back out there. But there is sell high potential here. I just think you got to make sure you're not selling high with the idea of, okay, this was a 1-week thing and they're going to disappear. This could clearly be the beginning of, some very good production and some very solid games going forward.
And it's still going to be an Aaron Rodgers-centric offense. I still think we're going to see Rodgers have 30-plus pass attempts most weeks. I think
there's a vital opportunity.
Oh, okay.
For Brees Hall, is that what you said?
Devontae, you could take it. Like, I'm obviously like, I love what he did, and that touchdown on Petrie was awesome, but I don't know if he can catch a bunch of 30-plus yard passes every single week. I still think he's going to be a red zone threat. Still think he's going to get a ton of targets. But if you can get like number one receiver return for Devontae, I would take that. But other than that, I'm good with the Jets the rest of the way.
No, but Brees Hall, people are frustrated, and he has 3 catches in his last 2 games. And the first game with Devontae Adams, he had a ton of targets. But since then, I mean, I think this is a valid question. I was thinking about it. Like, I don't think Brees Hall is anywhere near. Well, just running back is so good this year that you could argue he's closer to what, maybe RB10 than RB2.
Correct.
He's definitely going to be classified as a bust based on where he was drafted because he's not going to return that type of value. That being said, if you can still get him cheap. So, for example, let's just say Chase Brown goes out and has a monster game this weekend, right? And the Brees Hall manager is frustrated. You may be able to turn, let's say, Chase Brown and something into Brees Hall. Chase Brown and, I don't know, let's say an injured receiver, Mike Evans, or I don't know if I go Nico Collins.
What if it were Josh Downs? What if Josh Downs goes out and has 15?
So Chase Brown and Josh Downs, if the Brees Hall manager is struggling to make the playoffs and needs 2 starters, and both those guys are coming off good games where you see the path to success for both of them, and you need a superstar, yeah, I'd make that deal.
All right,
Make that deal to get Brown and Downs.
If I'm desperate, I mean, look what Heath did yesterday, right? Heath is 2-6. He made 2 trades, right? That he oversold, right, or undersold his start.
I didn't see the trades. I don't know if they were.
So he made 2 trades in our fantasy football today league, which I got questions about as the commissioner, and understandably so. Why people?
Oh, ridiculous!
I traded him because he needs starters for this week. So I traded him David Njoku and Alexander Madison. He gave me George Kittle and Juwan Jennings. So again, he needs 2 starters. He likes Madison a lot this week, and Njoku's obviously playing well. He can't use those guys. If he loses, he's done.
Okay.
He also traded Adam Christian McCaffrey for Aaron Jones and
Wan'Dale Robinson.
So
he traded a whole bunch of guys.
Not egregious, neither one.
No, they were fine.
No, none of them are egregious.
But
you see what he's trying to do. Like, he's desperate for players that he needs to win this week, and those are trades he's giving up star players to save his season.
Yeah. All right. Well, to wrap this game up here on the Texans side, weird that Mixon didn't have a catch. He had more pass attempts than targets, but he had a good game. Very encouraging for Tank Dell. Finally made a play downfield.
He looked great.
He's probably going to get started again next week against Detroit, who gives up, I think, the most fantasy. No, I'm wrong about that. But yeah, anyway, could see it.
Well, Nico Collins should be back next week.
Is that right?
Well, that's
what they said.
I will rephrase. He's eligible to return next week. His 4 games on IR are done. So if he's able to play, he can return. I heard the same thing coming into the week that he was going to be able to return. But again, hamstring injury, got to get through practice. We'll see how that goes. But obviously, if you started Tank Dell, you were pleased beyond belief with the performance. Another like Dalton Schultz is done. Forget about it. There's no way you can even consider using him. I thought he almost got his foot in on the one on the end of the game there. And speaking of Joe Mixon, I thought this is where the Texans lost the game, was when he was rolling. They're in the red zone. I don't know exactly where they were. And the stupid direct snap to him where they throw it to CJ Stroud. So stupid. Like absolutely so stupid.
Because it was 2nd and long. It wasn't even like a big threat to, if it were 3rd and short or something like that, you might be able to trick them. But I don't know. I didn't like that play at all. All right. Anyway, the schedule, they get Detroit and Dallas. Detroit does give them the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. Detroit and Dallas coming up. So
with everybody on a bye next week, he's absolutely a starter.
I was talking about Stroud. I was transitioning to Stroud.
I'm sorry,
Dell, we're going to certainly. All right. You know what? We got time to talk about that. That is it for Thursday Night Football. The Jets. Okay. Sunday morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll be here answering your questions. YouTube.com/fantasy football today. Jamie's going to be on CBS Sports HQ at 10 a.m. Eastern and helping you set your lineup. So that is on Sunday.
I wear the hot dog?
I think you should. And
I think you should wear it every day for the rest of the season.
I think we have a quick YouTube question here. I wish I could find who wrote it, but sorry, not giving credit. But do you like your hot dog buns toasted or non-toasted?
I don't mind.
Yes.
When you have a Seattle style hot dog, having them toasted is mandatory.
And that is what?
Well, remember, Ben Gretsch taught us about this.
Yeah,
it's a hot dog with cream cheese and grilled onions and hot sauce.
Oh,
on a toasted bun. It's actually good.
I always toast.
Don't you dare go, oh, gross to that.
Yes.
When I know what you like to eat on Sunday mornings before football starts.
I never have that. The football Sunday, the cinnamon raisin bagel with ham, Swiss cheese, tomato, and Russian dressing. Everybody's
last time you had it?
Sounds good except for the cinnamon raisin. That everybody says that, and I get that.
When's the last time you had it?
A few months ago, I decided to try it. I think, or I don't remember when, but one time in the last 15.
That was the time
years.
when you ordered it sheepishly and didn't claim it.
Yeah.
You sent your wife in to go get it.
No. I ordered it over the phone because I was too embarrassed to let anyone else hear it. All right, listen, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. News and notes when we come back. Not too bad this week, but we'll tell you about the Titans running backs after this break on Fantasy Football Today.
Sunday, red-hot QBs take center stage. A showdown in the dog pound. And the stars are set to light up the late afternoon. Now that's a CBS Sports Sunday.
Okay. I have another question that I have to get to later from the YouTube chat. Remind me. But news and notes. Our mailbag show is at 2:30 p.m. today on Friday. So we'll have updated injury reports, and we'll tell you if Lamar Jackson gets back to practice. But right now, Jackson has missed practice twice with back and knee issues, and this is obviously a huge deal. But
yeah, Harbaugh kind of played it off as it's no big deal and that he was just getting rest. But 2 days of that seems a little suspicious. So Friday's a big day. I assume he's going to play, but we'll see.
Yeah. Jordan Love was limited in practice. Sounds like you guys have ranked him, so we'll get to that game in a little bit. Jared Goff missed practice, but that was Wednesday. He's back. Sorry,
he's back.
Will Levis, we'll see, and Derek Carr is going to start, and Bryce Young is going to start. All right, the big running back news is in New York and Tennessee. Tyrone Tracy is looking good. They seem optimistic for him, though. This is a little surprising. It is a great matchup, and we will talk about that game. But you guys don't have Tracy ranked right now, right?
No, but if we did, he'd be top 20 for sure. Minimum, maybe even top 15.
It's tough to crack the top 15 this week.
It is. So like at bare minimum, he'd be like 18, but I could see him getting as high as like 15, 16.
Would Tracy be ahead of Brian Robinson Jr.?
He would be for me.
No.
We're hopeful that did you rank Travis Etienne?
No.
All right, but he could still play.
Dave may have.
I don't get that.
It's such a dopey inside joke that it's not even worth.
Dave usually does a great job of starting the week with telling Heath and I who's in and who's out, and then we sort of add to the list to take away whenever as it goes. So Dave puts in the email this week: DK Metcalf out, and then I see his ranking. He ranked DK Metcalf,
but he hasn't practiced yet. Sorry,
I know it was a bonehead move.
All right, we'll talk about
Thanks for bringing it up, Jamie.
We'll talk about the Panthers running backs later. Jerome Ford was limited. All right, so Tony Pollard missed practice. Tajay Spears missed practice after being limited on Wednesday, but Pollard hasn't practiced yet this week. They have New England. Great matchup here. Speaking of hot dogs, Dave, we could have a chestnut at running back for the Titans.
Before you go run and pick up Chestnut, go run and pick up the Patriots DST if there's no Pollard or no Spears.
Right. That's a fair point. I do think that there's going to be opportunity for Julius Chestnut, thicker running back, not a burner. I don't know what else to really say about him. He's a guy who's getting an opportunity. If you're desperate at running back, you could pick him up. I did pick him up in the league that I reference all the time, 14 teams, triple flex. Like he would be a flex if he were the only running back that was getting touches in Tennessee and potentially could score. But I don't have high expectations for him.
Okay, I'm going to drop Josh Palmer for him. Bam. Now I have Julius Chestnut.
And hashtag Palmer.
You're wondering what the hot dog joke was. Joey Chestnut is the guy who eats all the hot dogs. I'm sure most of you knew that. Zamir White. Did Zamir White practice? I think he missed practice, right?
He missed practice on Thursday.
Okay.
So we'll see. That would ruin the value on Alexander Madison if he played for Heath. And when I say ruin, I mean he'd lose like 6 carries.
Bucky Irving is going to miss practice a lot with the toe injury, but we can just expect him to play. He's going to be dealing with the toe injury for the rest of the season. And we got an update on Isaiah Pacheco. He's, I guess, trending in the right direction. He's not going to practice this week. It doesn't seem like he's going to practice next week. Don't know when he'll be back, but he will be back at some point this season, it seems. Isaiah Pacheco. Wide receiver. Oh, trick-or-treating yesterday, and I'm just, I just like look at my phone, and I'm like, oh, I think I probably muttered some type of mild profanity, and people were like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, Puka Nakua's got this knee injury again.
Oh, same.
Yeah, like, oh.
Everybody had that reaction.
I know, but, I was around.
I had obviously worked out well. 10-team league where I was starting Puka and I had Davante Adams on the bench, and I made that switch. So thanks. That worked out.
Very nice. Yeah, so listen, they say it's not serious. He might play this weekend, but red alert, right?
No, they said he's going to be okay. So as long as he
his
practices
status for this week is still in doubt. It's in question. His status this week is still in question.
Yeah.
I read a report from NFL Network that said that he's okay.
Okay for this week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, I'll get you 2 different ones. So just to make sure.
All right. Well, listen, though. I mean, this is a guy who keeps having issues with this knee. I don't know how you can feel so great about it with Puka. You have to make a decision in terms of whether or not you want to trade him or not. DK Metcalf still missing practice. Jags receivers are looking pretty good right now. Amari Cooper was limited again. T. Higgins did not practice, so he's still day-to-day.
This is from Schefter last night. Puka Nakua's knee injury is not believed to be serious per sources. His status on Sunday's game in Seattle still is to be determined.
Okay. And that came out after Mike Garofalo said that he's expected to be fine. Not a major injury, huge sigh of relief.
Right, but that doesn't say he's going to play this week.
Right. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on Friday.
Juju Smith-Schuster missed practice, and Chargers wide receiver DJ Chark could play this week. Dallas Goedert not looking good there. He still has missed practice. If he practices today, maybe he'll play against the Jags. And David Njoku. This is, again, the ankle injury perhaps lingering. You got to keep an eye on David Njoku because he missed practice with his ankle injury. The Jaguars could be without both of their starting offensive guards. The Bears have a beat-up offensive line. I didn't check the practice report for the Packers. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Was back at practice.
Who?
Offensive line was back at practice, I believe.
Oh, okay, good. That's what I meant. That's what I wanted. And defensively,
now for them, Alexander and Williams did not practice still.
Correct.
On defense. Yeah.
On defense.
Okay. Yeah. Chicago's defensive backs were still out. The Cowboys are still pretty beat up. And you know what? That's the first game we're going to talk about. Dallas at Atlanta. And they have been pretty bad against the pass lately. And let's get to one question for each game. Here we go. Dallas at Atlanta. Which quarterback do you prefer, and do you like them this week?
I do like them. I like Cousins more than Dak.
I like them both. And I like Dak slightly more than Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, since Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt, and now you got Deron Bland still not back, and you got Trayvon Diggs missing practice, I think they've given up like 7 passing touchdowns in their last 3 games, and it's been on 30 or fewer pass attempts in each game. They've just been terrible. I was trying to do the math before the show, but the yards per attempt, they've been horrible, the Cowboys, against the pass. All right, Detroit at Green Bay. Is this a bonanza? Okay, here's a weird question. Is this a bonanza with only one wide receiver we can trust?
It's a great question. I think clearly you're starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then do you start – look, you're starting Reed and Dobbs in 3 receiver leagues. There's no question about that. In 2 receiver leagues, do they crack the lineup? It probably comes down to who you have. But hopefully, I mean, it's a great matchup.
Yeah, it's so frustrating with Reed because he's getting, 6 targets now. And he's – by the way, Jaden Reed doesn't have a rushing yard. He's got he keeps getting a 1 carry for no yards, getting almost nothing on the ground. The first 2 games, he had a lot of rushing yards. By the way, do you want to hear, I teased it, why I think the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl? Yeah. Okay. Look at the quarterbacks they've played. Stafford, Mayfield, Kyler, Geno Smith, Dak, Darnold, Mason Rudolph. They haven't given up a multiple touchdown game yet. They're something like 12th against quarterbacks. Their pass defense has, even with Hutchinson out, their pass defense has improved so much. And they're obviously one of the best offenses in football.
They really need to be aggressive, and I'm sure they're trying to make a trade for a pass rusher.
All the talk has been about Zadarius Smith going from Cleveland.
And it's the game of the week.
We're
Yeah.
waiting for you to say something.
We really need Jordan Love to play, but it's the game of the week. Hey, it's the Lions and the Packers. Oh,
So in the 2 games without Aiden Hutchinson, the blitz rate has actually been 45%. So that's how they're generating their pass rushes, by sending more players at the quarterback. And it's working out for them overall. I wouldn't say that there's like one guy that's just dominating from what they have. So a trade should be in the works for them. They should add somebody to make that pass rush better so that they don't have to blitz as much.
all right. Listen, whatever. I was just trying to get game of the weekend. The Chicago's at Arizona. Is this a bad game for the
It gives you great analysis. You're like, whatever.
Yeah. Is this a bad game for the passing games? Chicago at Arizona.
I mean, is it the ones you like? Oh my God, I can't wait to start Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore. Probably not, but it's hard to sit those guys.
Is it hard to sit DJ Moore?
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard to sit Moore at this point.
Okay, tell me 3 receivers you're starting over DJ Moore that people have the ability to get. Yes, Josh Downs, Jacoby Myers, Cortland Sutton. Great, you can start them over DJ Moore.
Thank you for answering my question.
That was easy.
You starting Cedric Tillman or DJ Moore?
I have them back to back. Moore is 1 spot ahead of Tillman. I don't know if I'm going to keep it that way.
So no, I did like a little mid-season look at DJ Moore. He is currently wide receiver 35 per game in non-PPR, number 32 per game in full PPR. I was optimistic about him because I felt like earlier in the year, Caleb Williams had missed him on so many big plays, but Williams was so bad last week, and he doesn't throw that much. He's got 2 games with more than 29 pass attempts. All right, we can talk about him a little bit more later. So let's go to our next game. In 1 question for each game. Control F. Los Angeles Rams at Seattle. Give me a quick rundown of how we're ranking the wide receivers with uncertainty about Metcalf and Puka.
Well, you're definitely going to put DK Metcalf in your rankings at the top. All right, I'm done with that. No, it's Puka first, Cooper Kupp second, and I don't want to start anybody from Seattle. I know the matchup's favorable and all that, but I'm tired of chasing Jackson Smith and Jigba's targets. I'm tired of thinking about Tyler Lockett. DeMarcus Robinson was great last week. I don't want to chase that. I'm good with just the 2 Rams receivers if I can help it.
Okay. I mean, look, it wasn't a bad game for JSN. He had about 6 for 70-ish, something like that. It's okay. But, all right. Washington at the Giants. Why is Malik Neighbors in your top 8?
Why is he not?
Why is he not? Look at the last 2 games since they lost Andrew Thomas. Commanders have one of the best pass rushes in football. And in their last 5 games.
Last week.
What's that?
He had 13 targets last week.
And he scored what? 13-something fantasy points. 14.
Almost had a touchdown on top of it.
I mean,
like, he's still going to get tons of opportunities, and that's all you could ask for.
Fine, I'll start Malik Neighbors. Jeez.
there's only one reason not to start Malik Neighbors.
You have Josh Downs.
No, Daniel Jones at home.
Oh, yeah. Daniel Jones hasn't thrown a touchdown in 3 straight games. Jacksonville at Philadelphia. How do you approach the Jaguars running backs?
When you see them, you run the other way. That's how you approach them.
What'd you say, JB?
Bigsby's a flex. If ETN plays, it's tough to say any of them are any good.
Do you think they're going to be competitive in this game or trailing in the second half of this game?
Probably trailing.
They're still competitive if they're trailing.
Yeah, I'm nervous about Bigsby, and I don't even know how much I really like him as a flex. If ETN plays, then I think there's some appeal as a PPR flex, but not a top 24 running back. And if he's out, then I think Dearness Johnson comes back on the map as a check down guy for Trevor Lawrence. I'd be surprised if either guy found 11 PPR points. Any of them.
I mean, look, they said Doug Peterson said he was optimistic about ETN at the beginning of the week, and he's been limited in practice for 3 weeks in a row now. But all right, the Saints are at the Panthers. How do you approach the Panthers running backs? And then I have a second question for this one.
I'm starting Chuba Hubbard. He's a number 2 running back.
So even if Brooks plays, we're not expecting a big role.
Correct.
Okay. And the Saints are obviously a great matchup here. Second question, are you tempted to start Xavier Legette or Jalen Coker, as the Saints have allowed 111 more yards to 3 receivers in their last 4 games?
I would prefer not to start them. Certainly not Coker. I'm not there yet. Legette is more of a desperation 4th receiver if you start 3 receivers and a flex. If you are stuck a receiver, he could be your 3rd receiver. It's just, if it was Andy Dalton, I'd have a lot more confidence.
I didn't think Bryce Young was terrible last week. I thought he made some improvements.
He did.
So maybe he's on the right track. Legette popped up on the injury report on Thursday, so that's something you have to keep an eye on. I agree with you, Jamie. I think that Legette is the one of the two, and he's at best a desperation type of flex.
I want to tell you my new favorite thing in fantasy football. It is turning on the full fab report, because I got Coker for $22 in our Dynasty League, and then I checked the fab report, and Heath bid $21 for him. Yes. All right. It is now time for the Hellman's Stack segment, where we discuss the QB and receiver duos to keep an eye on this upcoming weekend. Brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Mayo game day. Bring out the best. Dave, give me a couple QB wide receiver stacks you like.
Let's start with one that everybody knew would be a big-time stack when the season started, and that's Joe Flacco and Josh Downs taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Flacco's numbers for fantasy haven't been awesome week in and week out when he's played, but I think this is a matchup where he can actually get north of 20 fantasy points. Vikings allow a ton of numbers to wide receivers, the most fantasy points in PPR to wide receivers of any defense across the land, and they've allowed 6 touchdowns to receivers who line up in the slot in their last 4 games. Josh Downs, 77% slot rate, so I think that he's going to be the one in line to potentially be the best Colts receiver, and we've seen it with Flacco. 3 games, his floor is 15.9 PPR points. So the fact that he could be that good every week, and certainly this week with a great matchup, makes me push Josh Downs into my top 15 among wide receivers. There's a case to be made. He should be top 12. So if you've got Josh Downs, put him in your lineup and expect really good things. The other one is going to be Dak and Lamb. And that's one we did really expect to be good. I don't buy into Atlanta's defense other than their safety. So maybe there won't be a ton of huge yak plays for CeeDee Lamb, but I think he's still going to get a ton of targets. The Cowboys realized last week, all right, if we're going to do anything, we just got to get this connection going again. CeeDee Lamb, elite wide receiver. Dak Prescott, top 12 quarterback.
Atlanta's allowed 10 touchdown passes in their last 4 games, facing Baker Mayfield twice, Andy Dalton, and Geno Smith. And this has been the Hellman Stack segment, brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Just like these QB and wide receiver duos, tailgate snacking and Hellman's Mayonnaise make the perfect combo, bringing out the rich and creamy taste to all your game day dishes. So give it a try, and Mayo game day be delicious with Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. Shop at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store and add some extra deliciousness to your game day dishes this football season.
Does mayo belong on a hot dog?
I think it's, yeah. I mean,
it's okay. I don't think you have to do it, obviously.
Mayo's going to make pretty much anything better. It's gonna,
yeah. As long as it's not ketchup on a hot dog, we're good.
Dallas is at Atlanta. So from one of Dave's stacks to that game. And your stat of the game is what I just said about the Falcons being so bad against the pass. I just wish Dak Prescott were running a little bit more. He has 25 rushing yards in 7 games, something like that. And all right, so you guys said you liked them. What about Joe Flacco versus Cousins and Dak?
Behind them.
Agreed.
You like them better. Who do you like better again, Cousins or Dak?
I have them basically back-to-back. I like Dak slightly better.
And I'll take Cousins, and I've got Cousins a few spots ahead of Dak.
It's almost like, for me, the tiebreaker is who's got the better running game, and it's Atlanta.
Right. This is feels bonanza-y.
It's the highest projected score of the week.
Yeah.
You're going on a limb with that one.
No, but the Cowboys offense really is not clicking on all cylinders.
They are not, but you saw some signs of life in the second half with Dak and CeeDee Lamb last week, and I mean, at some point, it's either going to come in garbage time, which could happen, or I think they'll start to connect, a little bit more consistently. This is just not a bad defense for him. This is a defense that he could have success against.
Okay. So let's go Dak Prescott. Dak or Stafford?
Is Puka
Stafford
playing?
over everybody.
What if
in
Puka
this
doesn't?
game and flex.
Not if Puka's out.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, if there's no Puka, then we have to change that. But if Puka plays, then Stafford's in.
All right. So listen, I'll make this game quick here because you're starting Lamb, you're starting London, you're starting Bijan. You're going to start Kyle Pitts. And we'll talk about Rico Dowdle. We'll talk about the secondary wide receivers. But let me ask you about Jake Ferguson. Well, who do you like better, Jake Ferguson or Kyle Pitts? Jake Ferguson does have 7 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games.
Pitts over Ferguson.
Yep.
Okay. Oh boy, I got a problem here.
What's wrong?
Never mind. We're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah, my alarm was
You
going
need
off.
to take a little break.
I thought I had to go turn the alarm off, but no, we're all good. Jake Ferguson.
Your pair's not working today.
Come on, get out of here, man. We do it all ourselves here. Jake Ferguson or Evan Ingram?
I've got Ingram higher.
Ingram, but Ferguson has the better matchup.
Yeah. Gonna talk about that Eagles defense. Been really good when we get to that game. Okay, sure. So anyway, Mooney and Tolbert. I'm sure there's a big difference between them, but Jamie, do you like Darnell? Do you like the secondary wide receivers in this game?
It's hard not to like Mooney. I mean, every game Cousins has played well. Mooney has had a big part in it, and so I think you still treat him as a number 2 receiver until he proves there's a consistent stretch of bad games for him. For Tolbert, there's been a consistent stretch of bad games for him. And so, he needs to step up and have a strong performance here. But I also think that if Dak's going to have a big game, that he's going to have some hand in it, whether it's, just a contributing role or starting role. So, desperation number 3 receivers, slightly ahead of Xavier Legette if we're going back to, that range of receivers. But you look at point total, you look at opportunity, you look at matchup, and this should be a game where Tolbert has a chance to succeed.
It is, but there's been plenty of those games, and Tolbert hasn't succeeded. You can go back to his last 2 games, and he's been 8 PPR points or lower in each of them. So I'm a little more hesitant on Tolbert. He's outside of my top 48 at wide receiver. I would start both Panthers receivers ahead of Jalen Tolbert. Mooney, I'm sold on, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that when Cousins has his big games, and he had a big half against Tampa last week, he wasn't pressured. The Bucs didn't blitz him, so he had all day to throw. And even on the times where they did blitz him in the first half, they didn't get particularly close to him. And so he just had the time to look downfield, and that worked out well for Pitts and for Mooney. Is the Dallas pass rush, as we know it now, any better than what the Bucs have? I would say no. So I think that there's going to be more opportunities for Kirk Cousins to chuck it long, and that's obviously good for Mooney. It's the highest I've had him ranked this year. He's 20th for me in wide receiver and PPR.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, this pass defense for the Cowboys has just really suffered. The last 2 games, right. Jared Goff 30 points, Brock Purdy 27 fantasy points. Although Purdy did have he didn't really light them up through the air. It was this rushing, but he still had a very efficient game as a passer. All right, so let's talk about.
Listen, Dallas does have a chance to get Deron Bland back. I don't think that'll affect Mooney. It might. I don't know. It depends on where Bland lines up and where Mooney lines up. But I agree. I don't think that secondary is playing at a high level. And even if they were, just the fact that the pass rush is going to give Cousins time makes me really like Cousins. He's 6th for me.
Okay. Should I start these quarterbacks over Burrow?
I'd start Cousins over Burrow.
No.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about Rico Dowdle here. Did he crack your top 24?
He's just outside for me.
Yeah.
I like him though.
Dowdle or Nick Chubb?
Dowdle.
Dowdle or Javonte Williams?
Dowdle.
In PPR, I've got Javonte a spot higher.
Javonte at Baltimore. All right, I think we're good here. Sit the DSDs.
It's got to be Dowdle in the passing game if he's going to win. Falcons are top 5 in fewest in most receptions allowed to running backs. Last time we saw Dowdle had a 5 catch game.
Yeah. I was about to say last game, 6 targets, 5 catches, 30 yards. Yeah. Dallas has to give it to him though. He, 3 games ago he had 1 target and 1 catch. He scored on it, but it was just the one.
Dak's going to give it to you. He's going to give it to you. Right, Dave? Yep. Raise the roof. Okay. All right. Let's go to our next game.
City.
Actually, let's go to a commercial break. And when we come back, it's the game of the week, although there are some weather concerns we should bring up. We'll be right back for Detroit at Green Bay after this.
A new crown awaits.
Brilliantly taken.
The journey to become European football royalty has begun.
A stunning goal.
The UEFA Europa League on CBS Sports Network and stream every match live on Paramount Plus.
All right, Detroit is at Green Bay. There is rain in the forecast. We're not going to make a big deal of it right now. We'll update you on Sunday if it looks bad, but rain usually isn't a huge deal. Wind would be, like if it's torrential, it could be a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. So Green Bay 6-2. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They've scored 24 or more points in 6 straight games. The Lions 6-1. They're on a 5-game winning streak. They've scored 31 or more points in 4 straight games, 42 or more points in 3 of their last 4 games. And you just know who you're starting. You're starting both running backs, but Montgomery is always, we do get some Montgomery questions. He's currently the number 11 running back per game in non-PPR, number 15 in full PPR. And I think he has 1 catch. He had 1 catch. Okay, no, sorry. He had 1 catch last week. Yeah, 2 straight games with 1 catch. That's what I thought. Okay, so anyway, Montgomery or Giants starting running back?
Giants. No, if it's Tracy, I'll start Tracy. If it's Devin Singletary, I'll start Montgomery.
Montgomery for me for both.
Okay. You know what? We'll keep it simple. Let's start St. Brown and the 2 running backs. Jared Goff or Jordan Love. Who do you like in this game?
Love.
I currently have Goff over Love. I want to see how much more Love practices before I put him in over Goff.
Yeah. What is the deal with the Packers passing game? This is the big question here, because how much do you trust Jordan Love if he plays? Detroit, like I said, they've faced really good quarterbacks. They haven't faced Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. They haven't faced elite guys. Well, they've faced Baker, held him to 20 points. But they haven't given up a huge game yet. No multiple touchdown games, 12th best against quarterbacks, and Love is injured. So
it's been 2 games without Hutchinson, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And 1 was against Mason Rudolph?
Yeah.
And the other was against
Darnold.
I don't know if those guys are in the same league as Jordan Love.
Yeah, I would agree if he were healthy, but I just don't know.
So if he's practicing, you got to assume he's healthy, and
but he's not.
Who knows what he'll take to subside the pain prior to the game to help out his cause. It's called Toradol. I just think if he's out there, look, we had the same situation with him when he came back from his knee injury, right? And he wasn't 100%, and he still had 3 touchdowns in that game, Jordan Love. So if he starts, I'm going to trust him.
Okay.
I think there's no question he's got more upside than Jared Goff. But
it's also first game for the Lions outdoors, right? Or second game, right?
Oh, that's a good question. Is it the first outdoor game for the Lions?
So. They have 3 and 2 of them are in the season.
At Arizona, at Dallas, at Minnesota. So
first outdoor game in weather could be tough.
Some retractables there, right? I mean, could have been out.
Yeah, but the retractables don't really count if the top of the dome is open.
Fine. Seems outdoorsy to me. Okay. So then what do you think about Jaden Reed and Dobbs, and where are these guys ranked, Jamie?
They're just outside the top 24. I do think if this is where, the Jordan Love questions come into play for me, because if he was 100% healthy, then I think you could make a case for both of those guys, just given the matchup. But you have to sort of build that in a little bit to the inconsistencies and the injury to him. And I'll say this, if Jordan Love was 100% healthy, he'd probably be a little bit higher for me as well. So I do have that factored into his ranking. But there's just been no rhyme or reason to it. Now, granted, you could say, okay, last week he got hurt and didn't finish the game, so who knows what those guys would have finished with. But Dobbs has been outperforming Reed in 2 of the last 3 games. And it's hard not to say that he may be the safer of the group. At some point, Watson's going to make a big play, and then you're going to say, okay, he looks great. And then maybe Wicks makes a big play. I know, Dave, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, you were very high on Dontavian Wicks. We were having the conversation of Wicks versus some other receivers in the high-end number 3 range. And he's capable of that, so there's that factor as well. And then you got, Mr. Touchdown, Tucker Kraft. So he takes away touchdowns for those guys also. So it's a great group. It's why Jordan Love has been so successful. It's just frustrating for us to say this guy is going to definitely guarantee you production.
And I think the reason you can buy in specifically to Reed and Dobbs is because of all the fantasy points that are given up to wide receivers from the Lions. Calvin Ridley was having a terrible year, and all of a sudden, with a huge target volume, looks like an all-pro and has his best week of the season. So I've got Reed at the top of the list. It's mostly based on knowing that he's going to play a lot and versatile and all that stuff, but Dobbs is not far behind him. Those are the two that I think you could really buy into as viable fantasy are bye-week replacements.
Number one wide receivers have absolutely owned Detroit. A wide receiver scored 16.1 or more PPR fantasy points in every game against the Lions. But these are some of the best wide receivers in football. Kupp, Godwin, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and last week it was Calvin Ridley. But they have absolutely struggled against number ones. I don't know who the number one is.
Right. I was going to ask you, who was the number one receiver last week for the Packers?
These are all, no, Godwin's a slot guy. Kupp's a slot guy. Actually, there are two slot guys in there. Lamb plays in the slot quite a bit too. Jaden Reed is like a 75% slot rate guy.
Right. Slot rate and short routes.
But here's the thing about Reed. The difference with Reed and the other 75% slot rate guys is that he gets downfield targets. That's what made him so good last year. But this year, this is what I noticed here. Pass attempts of 15 or more air yards. In week 1, he had 3 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets, 15 or more air yards. Since week 1, 5 catches for 191 yards and no touchdowns, 7 targets in 7 games. Those big plays coming out of the slot have disappeared since that Eagles game in week 1.
And he had a big catch last week. It was a 51-yard play, but he only had 2 catches.
Yeah. So it's, he needs to hit the big one. And will he? I don't know. The Lions on paper are a really good matchup. They give up the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers. If you think this game is going to be a shootout, this game has a lower total than the Falcons game. That surprised me a little bit. Probably close. What do you think about
defense in this game too?
What do you think about Tucker Kraft, Dave?
I think he's okay to start, but you're doing it on the hope that he scores a touchdown. He doesn't get good target volume. He's had 5 or fewer targets in each of his last 4 games, 3 or fewer catches in each of his last 3. And if he doesn't score, just go look at what he did against Arizona.
Kraft or Mark Andrews?
I almost feel like they're the same guy.
Spider-Man meme.
I'll take Andrews.
Kraft or Mike Gesicki if Higgins is out?
Kraft, but they're close.
You can make the case for Gesicki in PPR.
Kraft or Laporta? Kraft or Laporta?
Laporta.
Sam Laporta.
Packers give up the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends. They struggled against Ingram and Brenton Strange last week. Yeah, so he's a tough call. Laporta or Pitts?
Pitts.
Pitts, but it's close.
Laporta.
Yeah, I've got Pitts 6th, Laporta 8th.
Laporta or Kincaid?
Laporta.
Jared Goff or
enjoy Laporta while you can, because when Jamison Williams comes back, there could go his deep targets.
Jared Goff or Derek Carr at Carolina?
Goff.
22 or more, 22 fantasy points over under 6 point per passing touchdown league. Jared Goff.
Over if there's no Evan Williams and no Jair Alexander.
Yeah, baby. Boy, is this guy playing well. It's insane, but he just never throws. 28 or fewer pass attempts in 6 of 7 games. The only time he threw more was their one loss, 55 pass attempts against the Bucs in week 2. I think that's it for this game. Not going to start like Khalif Raymond, are you?
No.
Nope.
All right. That's it for Packers and Lions. Chicago's at Arizona. This is my favorite stat of the week. I even tweeted it. Caleb Williams was pressured on 62.5% of his dropbacks at Washington last week. That is the highest pressure rate for any quarterback in any game this season. Let that sink in. That's what Caleb Williams was dealing with last week.
Right.
Commanders have a good pass rush, 3rd best in the NFL pressure rate on True Media. Commanders 3rd lowest.
Combination of Washington being aggressive, the Bears losing their starting left tackle, Caleb Williams holding the ball way too long.
Yeah, running for his life though. But this is a much better matchup from that standpoint. So they still have the offensive line concerns. But Dave, what are your expectations for Caleb Williams and DJ Moore specifically?
The best part about Caleb Williams is that you can it's pretty easy to find another quarterback to start over him until further notice. Flacco, as an example, you can find off the waiver wire. Bo Nix, you could trade for relatively cheaply. Derek Carr, you can find on the waiver wire. He would be somebody that I would start over him. I'm nervous about Caleb Williams, A, having high pass attempt numbers, and B, having 275 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 total touchdowns, anything like that. I really think the key to the entire existence of the Bears offense is their run game. And we saw it last week. They couldn't run early on. The whole offense sputtered. Late third quarter, DeAndre Swift rips off that long touchdown run. Then the Bears suddenly got their act together. It's just like what we saw earlier this season. When Swift started to get going, so too did the whole offense. I do not feel very confident in DJ Moore as anything more than like a borderline number 2 wide receiver that you're almost starting based on pedigree alone. He's not getting crazy high target volume from week to week. And Caleb Williams isn't doing a good enough job locating him and then throwing accurately to him game after game.
Okay. The thing is this finally is this the matchup that they're going to take advantage of? The Cardinals are certainly not. I know it's going to sound crazy, but I think you got to start respecting the Commanders' defense, right? The Cardinals are not.
I don't think that's crazy at all to say.
Yeah. All right. So we're just there. The Cardinals are not the Commanders.
No, but the Bears are not what they were 3 weeks ago either.
Great. I could see Caleb turning it around just because of the pressure rate. But yeah, I don't know. Jamie, you are higher on DJ Moore. I think you have him 17th. Dave has him 26th in PPR.
I probably have him too high, but again, and Dave said it. It's a lot based on what he's capable of doing, not necessarily what he has done. So this isn't necessarily a matchup I think that you should be worried about the receivers not performing well. It's a matter of, will he get the opportunities to perform well, and hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, he needs the targets. And Moore is 28th for Dave, 17th for Jamie, and in the middle, 24th for Heath. Okay, DeAndre Swift and James Conner, both easy starts?
Yes.
I think so.
Who do you prefer?
Swift.
I got some questions in the chat. Let's see how we do here. Caleb Williams or Justin Herbert?
Herbert.
Caleb.
Keenan Allen or Darnell Mooney?
Mooney.
Swift or Jacobs?
Swift.
I'll take Jacobs.
Part of my French, Mooney.
But you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's what the TV version says.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falco. And Cole Kmet is a sit. Okay, let's go to Kyler Murray. So we have talked about some really interesting quarterbacks, and I was going to bring up on Wednesday's show. Let's see if I still have my Wednesday notes. What was that? The 30th? The glut of quarterbacks. Okay, there are 5 quarterbacks averaging 19 to 21 points per game. Kyler Murray, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins. And then there's like 6 quarterbacks averaging a little bit more than that. Allen, Hurts, Flacco, Love, Wilson, Burrow. But you got Kyler, you got Goff, you've got Cousins in that mix, and then Dak Prescott too. So I was going to ask, how do you rank Kyler Murray with the quarterbacks from the Green Bay-Detroit game and the Dallas-Atlanta game?
He's behind them, but not by much.
How about Derek Carr or Kyler this week?
Kyler.
I would start Kyler over Carr. I've gone back and forth with Kyler all week. I would say that if Jordan Love is good to go, no real issues, he's an easy start over Kyler. If Dak does, what's his expectation? It's to throw a ton. Does he have the upside to beat what Kyler Murray can be? Because Kyler can run. That's when the questions start for me. Same thing with Flacco, Darnold, Jameis. A lot of those guys just don't run. And it's that tool in his tool belt that makes me gravitate toward Kyler Murray, even in a tough matchup like this. He was hitting a bunch of deep throws last week. I think he's going to have a hard time replicating that this week. But if he runs a lot more, and if they're the other issue is, number one, can he still hit those deep throws? Number two, will he even have to run? Because if the Bears offense falls on their face, this is a James Conner week, and Kyler is going to leave you empty.
All right, Kyler.
They held the Bears until the The Hail Mary held Jaden Daniels in check.
They did.
Yeah.
And
So
Kyler's best games this season have come when he's broken off a huge run.
or last week when he threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Fair. Prior to that, San Francisco game, 45, I think, yard touchdown run.
Mm-hmm.
The week
Yep.
before that, week before the Dolphins game was a 54-yard touchdown run.
Is it too much? You can't really count on a long touchdown run. You can count on some rushing numbers.
Let me
I don't
ask-
know. I've run the full circle on Kyler Murray in the last 90 seconds.
Well, yeah. Look, he was facing the number 1 team against quarterbacks last week, and he scored 26.2 fantasy
But we
points.
know that wasn't a real number.
Right.
So now the Bears are number 1, or they're number 2. They're about tied with the Dolphins, and it's another tough matchup, but it's tougher. It's really tougher. I mean, Jaden Daniels had a pretty bad game before scoring 8 points on the last play of the game. So questions in the chat, Kyler or Geno?
Kyler easily, if Geno doesn't have Metcalf, it's closer if Metcalf plays.
That's fair.
Kyler or Tua?
Kyler.
Yeah. Kyler or Stafford?
Stafford
Stafford,
easily if Puka plays. Kyler if Puka's out.
Okay. Someone's saying Kyler had 22 points against Miami. And I just want to point out, I said he had 26. It's a difference between 4-point and 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. So when I give quarterback numbers, it's always 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, just so everyone knows. All right, start James Conner. Marvin Harrison Jr., you guys have him in the top 17 or no, 18. Heath, I think, has him 21st. He's coming off a good game, but even in that good game, he only had 7 targets, with Kyler Murray throwing a season high in pass attempts of 36. And the Bears are really good against wide receivers, but they are beat up. So, Dave, make the case for Marvin Harrison Jr. Would you start him over the Colts wide receivers?
I would start him over Pittman. I'm not starting him over Down, certainly not in PPR. The hope is that the deep ball and it's not one, it's almost every target he had, those continue to happen. And that Murray and Harrison have their timing figured out. And if that's the case, then even against this defense, I think they could make some good connections. And you know that he's going to be involved in the red zone. The case against Marvin Harrison is simply that if it was a 1-week mirage against an overrated Dolphins defense, and now he's taking on a real defense in Chicago. I think you view him as a number 2 receiver. It's the safest way to go. It's when you get into that group of Jaden Reed and, Dobbs, Calvin Ridley, McConkey, Keon Coleman, like you can see upside and downside with them too. You're hoping on pedigree and just the simple fact that he's the number 1 receiver in Arizona.
So how many targets do you think he gets in this game?
He can get to 7.
7.
Okay, so he has 6 games this season with at least 6 targets. And in 4 of those, he's been 15.5 PPR points or more. So clearly numbers suggest when he's getting opportunities, he's performing. I would agree. I think 6-7 targets is certainly realistic. And so I would bet on him coming through close to that number.
So how many of those games did he get over 15 PPR points without a touchdown?
None.
Okay. So
he's caught a touchdown.
That's what I think that's what the whole ball game is. Does Marvin Harrison
score? Not true. He had 4 for 130 and 2 touchdowns against the Rams. So even if he hadn't scored the touchdown,
but he had 8 targets in that game, didn't he?
But last year, he had 8. Yeah, but last week he had 6 for 111. So I was wrong. So I mean, I was right and wrong. But no, he's had 2 games with 111 or more yards. But he hasn't played Chicago, right? They did struggle against McLaurin last week, but this has been a pretty tough matchup for receivers.
So here's a game.
Give him chances, he'll make plays. It's pretty simple. If Kyler gives him opportunities, you'll be happy about it.
Right.
All right.
And you could get a game. This is the floor. 7 targets against San Francisco a few weeks back. He had 2 for 36. You're hoping that he's not like that whatsoever.
Yeah. And I would look at like against Washington, 5 for 45 and a touchdown. He needed that touchdown.
I think, again, when it comes down to the game you have to play with yourself in determining this is how many opportunities will he get? And if the answer is you think he's getting 7 targets, you're starting him.
All right. Trey McBride is a top 3 tight end. Start him. And Chicago's DST is a low end starter. Rams are at Seattle. This is, I think, my second favorite stat of the week. The Rams allow the second most passing yards per attempt in the NFL. But they haven't been that bad against quarterbacks and wide receivers because they see the 6th fewest pass attempts per game. Pretty much every team they've played so far, out of 7 games, pretty much everyone is run heavy, except for one team, the Raiders. The Raiders are 5th in pass rate, And the Raiders threw 44 passes against the Rams. Guess who's number 1 in pass rate? Seattle. So you've got a team that stinks against the pass, but it has been hidden by the fact that they keep playing teams that like to run the ball against a team that hates to run the ball and throws all the time. So there's potential on paper for the Seahawks passing game, I think, to really have a strong showing here. With that said, this game and the starts and the sits are going to be largely determined by which wide receivers play. So we can skip the running backs because you should start Ken Walker and Kyron Williams, right? Just like start them there.
Yes, automatic starts.
We can skip the tight ends because you don't want to start them, right?
Fant is a good desperation play if Metcalf is out, simply because the Rams are number 3 in most fantasy points allowed to position.
And God, I want to teleconference Heath in here because as of right now, assuming Puka Nacua plays, Matthew Stafford is top 6 for Dave and Jamie, and he's 24th for Heath. So why don't you guys Jamie, make the case for Stafford as a must-start guy, and then where do you put him in your rankings if Puka Nacua does not play?
So 6 of 7 games going back to last year when he's had Puka and Cup on the field, he's been 22 fantasy points or more. So you saw last week the upside of what those guys can be when they're together. And hopefully Puka is healthy. I mean, you'd like to see what this offense looks like moving forward with everybody on the field. If there is no Puka for Stafford, you can just go back to week 2. Cooper Kupp had a monster game, 21 targets, 14 catches, over 100 yards, scored a touchdown. And Stafford, once again, was under 17 fantasy points. So he goes from top 6 to outside the top 12 for me, and still somebody that I would stream, but more in the conversation of Derek Carr and Bo Nix and Joe Flacco, as opposed to, oh my God, I have to start Matthew Stafford, or I want to start Matthew Stafford. Yeah, so it's just a matter of, Puka is going to sway it that much. So hopefully he's out there. And then look, you're starting both those guys, as Dave said. You start with Puka and Kupp, and both those guys are, must start receivers.
He loses his upside if there's no Puka.
Well, let me give you this stat for Seattle. They've allowed 255 yards, multiple touchdowns, and 23 or more fantasy points in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues to 4 of the last 5 quarterbacks that they have faced. They've been really bad.
One of those was Daniel Jones without Mike Neighbors.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they've been pretty injured, but they've been bad.
Last year, if I'm not mistaken, Stafford lit up the Baltimore Ravens, right? In one game?
Yes, in Baltimore.
And that was in Mike McDonald's offense.
Defense. Yeah. Where is Kupp in the rankings, Dave? And where
that was in the rain, if I recall.
Where is Kupp in the rankings, and where is he if Puka's out? And then if Puka's is out, who replaces him? Who plays that role?
Tutu
will probably play the role. Demarcus Robinson might see the targets, though.
All right, well, give me the rankings for Kupp with and without Puka.
Kupp is currently 12th for me in PPR. If Puka's out, he would move up considerably. I'd probably put him he'll end up at like 9. So he's a number 1 receiver either way.
All right, Geno Smith, you guys have him around 20th, but if DK Metcalf plays, he would be what?
Not that much higher. Maybe 15th. Maybe.
Metcalf?
No, Geno, if with Metcalf.
Oh, he'd be around 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, I think this Rams defense is getting better.
I don't know, man. Like what I just said, that might be true, but that stat really opened my eyes. Like this team is going to throw on them, and they have I think a bad pass defense that's been hidden. And I'm actually still excited to start JSN as a number 3 receiver, just a number 3 receiver. But that's the only type of league I have him in, 3 receiver leagues, and like I'm not even considering getting away from him.
I hope Geno plays well. It's funny. He's leading the NFL in passing yards, I think, still, right? And he's had some good moments. He's had some stinkers though.
He was terrible last week.
And you just wonder if they lose a game again and lose badly. Like, does Sam Howell get a chance?
Oh, it would be fun for me. It would be fun for me, but I hope not.
Because you get to howl like a wolf.
That's right. Okay, so JSN or Tyler Lockett, who do you like better?
JSN.
Okay. And JSN did get all the targets last week, 6 for 69 on 7 targets against the Buffalo Bills. But Lockett, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Go figure. His horrible game finally comes when DK Metcalf's not on the field. And then that's it for actually Lockett or Xavier Leggett.
Leggett over Lockett.
What about JSN or Leggett?
Jason.
I have JSN over Leggett.
I'd start JSN over Mari Cooper.
JSN or JSN or Tillman from the chat.
Jason.
JSN and a Tillman. JSN or Dobbins from the chat. PPR.
Jason.
Dobbins.
All right, so Jamie seems to be more into JSN this week.
More anti the other guys mostly.
Oh, okay.
You're anti-Dobbins? Oh, because it's the Browns.
Yep.
Washington is
beat up on defense. This
Yeah.
is not the same Browns.
Browns' run defense kind of stinks. And they don't have.
You keep saying that they're top 5.
Well, they're missing their best linebacker. Right? Yes. Where's
if JOK is out, then
he is. I'm pretty sure he's been ruled out.
It's a big difference. Plus, they got rocked by the run last week.
I guess they're okay. They don't stink against the run.
They played Derrick Henry, so that's.
But he didn't have a great game.
No,
he had
he
11 for 73 and a touchdown. He just didn't run that much.
They didn't give him that much.
All right, maybe I was a little harsh, but without their top linebacker, I think it could be worse.
That's definitely a big factor.
Washington's at the Giants. Updated stat of the game. I'm not even going to tell you how wide receivers keep crushing the Commanders. I'm going to tell you this. In their last 5 games, they've held Marvin Harrison Jr., Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, and DJ Moore to 60 or fewer yards. Only one of those 4 wide receivers have scored. They did get torched by Zay Flowers, though. Is this a tough matchup now for offenses, the Washington Commanders?
They definitely turned the corner. So, we'll see. And, to Dave's point, the run game got going for the Bears late in the game. That's because they couldn't run early in the game, and so, well, hopefully Tyrone Tracy will take advantage of he's out there. It's hard to trust Devin Singletary if he's the guy, but it seems that's the way you should be able to have success against them based on what we've seen in the last couple of games.
Yeah, so how good do you feel about the Giants running backs? I know you're starting Neighbors. He's top 8 for you. You're sitting Daniel Jones. We'll talk about Wandale. But how good do you feel about the Giants running backs? Jamie, I'll let you start.
I mean, Tracy's got 3 games in his last 4 with, I forget the number of carries, but it's like 15 touches or something like that. And he's had 3 amazing games with that workload. Why would the Giants go away from that if he's healthy? So that's why you want him to be out there. You want him to clear the concussion protocol and be able to go. It just would be surprising if he does so on the short week after they played on Monday. But again, things are trending in the right direction. Singletary had a good game against them last time. 16 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown. That was back in week 2 when Singletary was starting to get going a little bit. Then he had the groin injury. So we'll see how the Giants approach this. Do they give Singletary a little bit more work now that he's a couple of games removed from the groin injury? Or do they just continue to feature Tracy based on what we've seen? I hope that's the case. So I think Tracy's a number 2 running back if he plays, and Singletary is a flex if Tracy's out.
It's at least 17 carries, at least 19 touches, and at least 100 total yards for Tracy. 3 of his last 4 games. The only game he didn't do it in was against Philadelphia. They got blown out 28-3, and he had 6 carries, 3 catches. Total dead of a game.
Yeah, that's always a concern with the Giants is that they just get game scripted and I don't know if Tracy would catch. He had the 6 catches against Cincinnati, but other than that, he hasn't really had a lot of catches. But okay, whatever. He's a good start if he plays, and he's pretty much. I mean, I think one of you said you'd take Brian Robinson over him. One of you said you'd take Tracy over Brian Robinson. But
I think there's a little bit more upside with Tracy than Robinson, but they would end up being back to back, and it's in pencil for me that Robinson could go ahead of him. Robinson had a monster game.
He had a career high rushing yards against the Giants in week 2.
Yeah. So he could easily do that again. There could be a key defender missing for the Commanders. Frankie Louvu hasn't practiced this week. He's okay against the run. He's been one of their best pass rushers this year. And so if he's out, that's a big problem for Washington as far as getting after Daniel Jones.
Pierre's asking for a recommendation for a DST this week. Well, you can definitely go with Washington. They are highly recommended, and they see their roster percentage now is 93%. So you may have missed the boat on that, but they've been picked up. So anyway, let's talk about Brian Robinson Jr. though. Worth mentioning, 7 targets in his first 2 games. That's when Jaden Daniels was just checking down all the time. He's got 5 targets in his last 5 games. He had some injuries and missed, he played some less than full games there, but Jaden Daniels is not throwing to running backs on first and second down like he was in the first 2 weeks. Speaking of Jaden Daniels, he's a must-start guy. Start him. Daniels or Stafford?
I have Daniels over Stafford.
All right, so start Jaden Daniels or Josh Allen.
Allen is my number 1 QB.
Terry McLaurin's in the top 12. Zach Ertz, you guys like him? He's got 3 straight games with double-digit PPR fantasy points.
I think he's one of the reasons why Brian Robinson isn't getting as many targets anymore. They're starting to use him more in the passing game. At least 5 targets, take that for what it's worth, in each of his last 4 games. And you said it, double-digit fantasy points in each of his last 3. Not one of my favorite tight ends, but you could get by with Zach Ertz this week and feel okay about it.
I'd go a different direction. Giants are 4th best in fewest fantasy points to tight ends. They've given up 2 games with 10 plus PPR points to the position. One of them was Ertz, but it was 10.5. That was back in week 2. 11.5, I believe. It's under 12 is the best game against them. So I don't think this is the spot where the Commanders win.
All right. The Giants, they have faced a pretty easy tight end schedule. Ertz and Jake Ferguson are the only good ones they've faced.
But no touchdowns, though, right?
No touchdowns yet to a tight end. Okay, finally.
Ertz has 1 on the season, right?
Ertz has 1 2 weeks ago against Carolina.
Yeah.
So one of the worst defense in the league he scored.
Okay, let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson in this game real quick here. We've Wan'Dale Robinson or DJ Moore?
More.
Wan'Dale Robinson or Romeo Doubs?
I'm kind of done with Wan'Dale. I don't feel real good about starting him.
Not somebody you want to cut yet, but not someone you want to start.
Yeah, look, he's had a pretty high target share in just about every game, but last week was weird. I don't know why Slayton got so many targets, but he's got a 29% or higher target share in 5 of 8 games, 24% or higher in 6 of 8 games. He better get that. If he doesn't, he's going to have a terrible game. All right, so he's a low-end number 3, right? Is that fair to say with Wan'Dale?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's go to Jacksonville at Philadelphia. Stat of the game, in their last 3 games, the Eagles have held Amari Cooper, Malik Neighbors, and Jamar Chase to 54 or fewer yards, with only Chase scoring a touchdown. And that was Chase without T. Higgins. So the Eagles have turned the corner defensively over their last 3 games. Don't know if this is legit, but does this worry you at all for Brian Robinson? Would you start Brian Robinson Jr. or Devontae Smith?
Brian Thomas Jr. I would start Smith over Thomas, but again, Thomas is hard to bench. So especially with being less than 100%, but still he's a top 20 wide receiver.
I'd start Josh Downs over Brian Thomas Jr. too.
Agreed.
It's not that I don't like. I like that the upside. It's totally an upside play for Brian Thomas Jr. in the fact that he should see a lot of targets in the game, and he's not just a downfield guy. He gets targets in the red zone too. But this is a borderline impossible situation for Trevor Lawrence. He just got his left tackle traded away. His backup left tackle is Walker Little. He's not bad, but he's not.
Well, he started last week in the game where Lawrence had his best game of the season.
Okay. But this is not going to be one of his best games of the season.
No, I agree. The thing that I think you look for Thomas, for example, because nobody's starting Lawrence in this matchup, is that there is no Christian Kirk. So do they give him and Gabe Davis also banged up, so does he get force-fed targets like we haven't seen before, which is, certainly a possibility. Does he run a few more different routes because of the absence of Kirk, and maybe they move him around a little bit more? That's certainly a possibility. But yes, the Eagles defense has turned the corner, and you got to give them credit for, I think, finally getting the hold of, Vic Fangio's system, guys stepping up in the secondary. Pass rush has certainly been a much improved situation for them. Yeah. And so it's not slam dunk Brian Thomas, not a guy you want to play in DFS unless you're going to go contrarian. But I do think that if you have him on your team, given the landscape of what receivers are, it's very difficult to bench him.
1 touchdown allowed through the air since the bye, 14 sacks for the Eagles defense since the bye. They have absolutely turned it around.
Cleveland and the Giants were 2 of those teams. They had 15 of their 16 sacks. And few things here. Okay. Brian Thomas Jr. is amazing. So you guys have him in the top 16. Heath is lower on him. He's got him 31st in PPR, 23rd in non-PPR. But what was I going to say? Oh, both of the Jaguars starting offensive guards haven't practiced. So that's trouble. But also Darius Slay hasn't practiced. So that's a starting cornerback for the Eagles that may not play in this game. And then you guys talked about you don't really want to start a Jaguars running back. Bigsby is a flex if ETN does not play, and if ETN does play, would ETN crack your top 24?
No.
If ETN does play, who do you think leads the team in carries?
Bigsby.
All right.
Doesn't mean he's going to have a lot of carries though.
And then Evan Ingram is.
I would start Madison with confidence over any Jaguars running back right now.
Okay. Start Jalen Hurts, he's top 2. Start Saquon Barkley, he's top 2. Although I will say this about Barkley, he has 2 to 3 targets in each of the 4 games that A.J. Brown has played. He has 13 targets in the 3 games without A.J. Brown. His target share has dropped dramatically with A.J. Brown. But you start Barkley, Devontae Smith. When Dallas Goedert doesn't play, he scored 20 or more fantasy points in 5 of 8 games going back to last season when either Goddard or A.J. Brown has not played. And you're not going to start Grant Calcaterra, but he has had 2 solid games in the last 3. But you know what to do with your Eagles. All right, Saints are at the Panthers. Let's wrap up quickly here with this one. Stat of the game, the Panthers have allowed 4 touchdowns to tight ends in their last 2 games. Second most fantasy points to tight ends, despite no tight end having more than 5 targets all year. I would love to make the case for Juwan Johnson as a sleeper, but there's just too many good tight ends. But, Juwan Johnson's a sleeper.
He scored against them in week 1.
He did. And back in week 1, he was playing second fiddle to Foster Morrow. That's not going to be the case now. All right. This is a pretty easy game, right?
Morrow also had a touchdown in week 1.
Yeah. This is a pretty easy game, right? I mean, Kamara, Olave are obviously starts.
Musts.
Yep.
And where do you rank Derek Carr, who lit this team up in week 1?
Right around 15. He had 27 fantasy points against the Panthers in week 1. That was at home. He is coming off an oblique injury, and I don't like when you hear it. I know what he's saying. He's like, I'm not the savior for the season. So could this be a game where they just run all over Carolina? Absolutely. Where Kamara and maybe Taysom Hill, Kendre Miller and Jamal Williams are both banged up. So we'll see what that means for Taysom if you're looking for maybe a desperation play at tight end. But, he's got every opportunity here to have a similar type of game to what Bo Nix just had. And I know that's what Heath is kind of banking on by ranking Carr in his top 12. So great DFS play, great opportunity for him to have a strong performance, but wouldn't surprise me if it's, the Kirk Cousins game against Carolina. He was coming off the 50-point game or 46-point game against Tampa Bay, and the next week had 15 points.
That's why I'm a little bit lower on him, but I don't mind him as a bye week QB.
Carr, Goff, or Geno, asks David.
Goff.
And Geno would be ahead of Carr for me if Metcalf plays.
Chuba Hubbard or Kate Otten at flex?
If Brooks is out, it's Chuba easy. If Brooks is in, it's closer, but I would go Otten.
I got to run, guys.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's talk about Chuba Hubbard. And, coming off a 9-point fantasy game at Denver, he still hasn't had a good game with Bryce Young at quarterback. So including week 1 against the Saints. The Saints are worse than they were then, but
yes.
This is a great matchup. So, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Chuba Hubbard, Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard. What do you think?
Tracy over Hubbard, Hubbard over Singletary.
Jalen Waddle or Chuba Hubbard?
Hubbard.
This is with or without Jonathan Brooks?
Yep.
All right. So you still like Chuba Hubbard? Okay.
Yeah, I think, the thing with Brooks is, I think it was Heath said it on CBS Sports Network on Wednesday that we had the Chiefs game, the first game that Kareem Hunt was active and Carson Steele was still the starter. And then Kareem Hunt came in the game and you were like, oh, okay, he's different. He's going to be the guy moving forward. Like you wonder if that happens with Brooks, like, oh, he's a little different, and looks good. And they maybe just, give him every chance to be the guy. But I mean, first NFL game coming off of an ACL tear, like how many touches are you expecting for Brooks? Like I would like to see him play. I'd like to see him get the Miles Sanders touches, which is basically about 10. And then you kind of go from there.
And Xavier Leggett, I feel like you guys might be a little low on him. He's just outside the top 40. But the Panthers allow the Saints allow the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And Bryce Young did look a lot better last week.
Yeah.
And he missed Leggett on a open deep ball, which is a problem. I mean, that's not a good thing, but he was open. But anyway, you guys aren't excited about starting anyone.
No, it's not that we're not excited. I think it's just, confidence factor. Like I'm starting him in I think 2 leagues we get, just with the idea of it's one league I start 5 receivers, one league I start 4, so those formats, it's easy to start him. 3 receiver league, if you don't have a strong enough flex, I don't think he's a top 36 receiver right now.
Good question here to end the show. Chuba Hubbard or JSN, half PPR?
It's a lot of moving parts. So Chuba, easy if there is no Brooks. JSN, if there is Brooks. Chuba, if there's Metcalf. Chuba, if there's Brooks and Metcalf.
Okay. So the only
cover all angles there?
Yeah. All right. And the Saints DST, you just have them at number 1 this week?
Yes.
They're so bad though. This is the worst DST week I've ever seen.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's I guess
It's like I forget who the Chargers play next week. It's another good matchup. Maybe Tennessee.
Yeah, I don't know. This DSTs, they're just, it's a bad week. Hopefully you started the Jets. All right, we're out of here. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you on the mailbag later on. See you, everybody.